this schedule really shapes up for a playoff run with a 12-team playoff.
Areas that, you need to get from experience, which is just, hey, I need to make quicker decisions.
How do you define success for this team?
National championship.
What's going on, y'all? Bud Elliott here of the Cover 3 College Ball Podcast. This is my summer school series, and today, one of my absolute favorite guests, that's Stephen Brooks of Spartan Tailgate. Dude, you just nail it every year, giving us just the straight truth on Michigan State, good, bad, whatever. It's always good to see you. How you been?
Yeah, good to see you too, man. I've loved doing this. I guess I've had a little success sort of forecasting that has not translated to any other areas of my life, whether it's lottery or, blackjack. So it's only this. All my good luck and vibes go into summer school, Bud Elliott. And I'm happy to convey these powers once a year with you. And absolutely always good to talk to you, man.
So Michigan State in year one under Jonathan Smith, it didn't really go – certainly not quite as hoped. Maybe reasonably went kind of as forecasted, especially as they lost both stud defensive tackles to the portal there. At least one was spring window, right? So I mean that was really kind of a blow. Both were spring window. Okay, so if you lose $2 million in D tackles in the spring window, that's probably going to be difficult for any team to overcome. And it was. What's the general vibe out of East Lansing right now?
Kind of calm waters, calm seas, and in some sense, you could say maybe there's some comfort in that. But after the way last year went that you just described and sort of the initial, anybody, you get a new staff, there's an initial boost of wind there, lifts your wings and gets you going. And it's kind of fizzled out here now. So now folks are like, well, where is this all heading? And there's not a lot of, juice. There's not a lot of rocking in the water, a lot of waves. It's like, this is at least interesting. It's kind of just very quiet right now. And inside the program, they're kind of just hunkered down and worried about, developing the guys that they have and whatnot and trying to squeeze as much out of this year one to year two transition as you can get. That's really, I'm sure we'll talk about it a lot today, but that's really been the biggest theme of the offseason is like, okay, we have our feet underneath us. We know where we are. We know how to get to work, if you're on staff. We know my way around campus if I'm a new transfer. I know the scheme, obviously, way different offense, completely different defense. So there's a belief that just that familiarity and second year comfort will smooth out some rough edges and bear some fruit in different ways. But yeah, overall, it's kind of just quiet and folks are, of course they want it to work, but there's just not a lot of motion or activity for folks to really latch onto and get excited about right now. But we all know that can change very, very quickly once they start kicking it off.
So Smith has a great track record as an offensive coach. Pretty much everywhere he's been, he eventually gets on track. And I think we saw some signs last year. How is the offense going to look different this year and why?
I think you got to hope that they're smarter with the ball, obviously starting with the quarterback. I mean, Aiden Childs was good for a turnover a game minimum for like the first half of the season. They brought in a new quarterbacks coach and moved OC Brian Lindgren just to the offensive coordinator, overseer role. And then now Childs is a new position-specific quarterback who did work with him at Oregon State, a guy named John Boyer that they brought over, has some relationships with his staff, and again, worked with Childs. And when he came in, it wasn't this like glowing, like, man, I'm so excited to work with Childs. The guy's got all the tools in the world. Look at the frame, look at the arm. That's kind of how I would talk about him. But he was like very matter of fact, like, hey, guy's timing wasn't good enough. Got to get a lot better. Coverage ID, not even close. Got to get a lot better. So those are two things that he's working on specifically, and I think those will go hand in hand with cutting down the turnovers and just giving themselves a shot. They got to finish in the red zone better was an issue last year. And again, turnovers were a thing there. A couple different times the ball popped out, within the 5-yard line, and in a couple games might have been different, including the Oregon game. They drive right down there, and Childs loses it on the 2, I think. Now, they weren't going to win that game, but you score first there on the road, maybe things get a little sweaty. You never know. So I think there's that part. The other big thing I would say is I think they're going to be so much more dangerous across the formation. They went in the portal and got, I think it's 6 transfer receivers, but there's really a core at the top 2, I think, are really interesting, maybe top 3. Krishan McCray from Kent State, Omari Kelly from Middle Tennessee was really the big buzzy name in spring ball. And then, of course, they returned Nick Marsh, who, if you watched him at all last year, you said, didn't take you long to go, that's a dude right there. That's got to be one of their best players. And now in year 2, I think he's got All-American potential, quite honestly. Definitely all Big Ten potential. I think he's got All-American potential. But I think they're going to be so much better around him with these other receiver transfers that they brought in. They're just going to be more dangerous at the 2 and the 3, opens things up for the tight ends underneath. It's a very tight end friendly offense. We didn't really see that last year, but there's more threats across the board to supplement Nick Marsh. I think that's going to open a lot of things up for them offensively.
That'll be interesting to watch. I mean, Smith's obviously known for having a really, really good run game there at Oregon State and elsewhere. How do you think that aspect of the offense is going to look?
Bit of a mystery. It was not great last year. The running back position, I think, is totally up for grabs. They did bring in one transfer so far, a kid named Elijah Tolliver from Sac State. Older dude, has played a good amount, got like 1,200, 1,400, something like that, rushing yards for his career. I think he ran for about 9, or just short of 1,000 last year in his first real time as the guy. But he doesn't look to me as like, oh, that's your bell cow. There you go, plug and play. I think he factors into the rotation. Very good receiver out of the backfield. And then they got 2 sophomores who were committed to this staff at Oregon State and flipped their commitment right away and came here right away last year. And each of those guys played in, I want to say, 6 or 7 games, maybe even 8, and got like 10 carries apiece roughly as true freshmen. And they were early in the games. It was always very surprising. You'd be like, oh, there he is, a guy named Brandon Tullis or Mekhi Frazier. It'd be the second quarter of a 1-score game, and here's the true freshman, and they're getting a carry. So they were very intentional about inserting them into the fire just a little bit, just a little char, and then pulling them out. So I think those 2 sophomores are going to factor in big time. What we saw last year was it was almost exclusively 50-50 between the carries with Nate Carter and K'Ron Lynch-Adams. I think it'll be something similar where there's just 2 that emerge and everybody else, there's a gap there. Who those 2 are, I'm not sure yet. I think there's enough talent there. And then you got, two freshmen in the mix too, I should mention. One of them is Jace Clarizio, who was like a borderline 4-star guy. Once was committed to Alabama. They had to flip him back. He was first committed to Michigan State, then flipped to Alabama, then flipped back. East Lansing kid from right up the street. So they have some options. They're all very young. I think pass pro is going to be a big separator there. But of course, it all comes to, I think they have enough talent and ability there. Maybe not head turning, but I think it'll be enough. Of course, it's all going to boil down to the O-line, though, and that's been a problem for the program for years, as we've discussed. But I'm actually kind of optimistic about that group, at least cautiously. I've been burned before. This is a group that's basically had 1 good season since I've been covering them since 2018. So I'm very cautious, but I do think that there's some promise there with guys returning, like Stanton Ramil had a very good spring at left tackle, a former 4-star top 250 type of recruit. And then they hit the transfer portal hard there too with Connor Moore, who was one of our top tackles in the market from Montana State, Ohio kid coming back to the region. Matt Gulbin, veteran dude from Wake Forest, was a guard there. He's going to play center here. I think he'll solidify that position. And then Luka Vincic was a guy who was at Oregon State with him, veteran interior guy that I think will factor in there. So I think that unit has a chance to take a step forward and be better than they've been in a couple of years. And obviously that's going to lift the run game.
That's huge. And obviously Jim Halzik's still there, right? Coaching offensive line.
Yep.
I mean, pretty good track record there, obviously, for what he does. I could certainly see an improved offense here for Michigan State. I mean, like maybe a big jump.
Yeah. I mean, it will all come down to the O-line. The tight end room basically comes back fully intact. Your top 3, and again, they almost always have 2 on the field. They definitely always have 1 on the field. So that's a huge position. You look at the production they got out of that spot at Oregon State. They sent dudes to the NFL like pretty much every year they were there. So I like that group. The receivers, like I said, the receivers are versatile. That's what I really like about it. You got a little bit of different ingredients at every spot. You got big guys, small guys, shifty, slot, inside, outside. Basically all boxes are checked collectively. Nobody, of course, has them all. But so I like that part of it. I love Child's talent. How much actual development will take place between year 1 to 2 for him as a starter. I think a good amount, but I don't know that. I thought he'd be sharper than he was last year, quicker than he was last year. It does all come down to the O-line, but yeah, it could be a pretty fruitful offense, and that would be the thing to tie back to the beginning. Even if they're not winning 8, 9, 10 games, if they're scoring 35 a week, people would be okay with that in a way. Now, don't totally misconstrue me, but like at least it would be exciting. It'd be like, hey, we have a strong suit, at least that. And that's another thing about last year. The team never developed any kind of identity. We were into November. Like, what is this team's identity? What would you say Michigan State football is about right now. And that never really materialized. So hey, even if they're a high scoring team, but they're just kind of an average team, that would at least be something. I think fans would grab onto that. And I know that sounds like the bar is very low, but and maybe it is when you've been to one bowl game since Mark Antonio left. But that's kind of where I'm at. I do think there's a lot of potential there, quite a few unknowns on the O-line, but I got some, like I said, I got some faith that maybe things will pan out there and they'll be better than they've been.
All right, on the flip side, let's talk a little Spartan defense. Take a break.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
And we're back here on the Cover 3 College Football Podcast, Summer School Edition. That's Stephen Brooks of Spartan Tailgate. Does an awesome job covering Michigan State for us at the 24/7 Sports Network of team sites. So let's talk a little defense now. A unit that had some ups and downs last year. Thought some games that they fought well in some games. It was kind of a bit of a head scratcher. Who are some guys you think that could be real standouts for this defense this year?
I kind of like the personnel in the back end, and they've continued to add to it even well into this spring transfer window. But even the guys that they got coming into the winter, Josh Eaton is a guy that was at Texas State and was at Oklahoma before that. Long corner, I think it walked right in the spring and basically took a starting job. And whether he can hold on to that all the way through to week one, we'll see. But I'd say he's got an inside track there. Older guy in his last year, I like him. Opposite him, you've got Chance Rucker, who was a 4-star kid coming out of Texas, played a lot as a true freshman in that chaotic, terrible 2023 season where Mel Tucker gets fired midway and they lose all these games in a row and just, everything was in flames. That year, he got hurt in game 2 last year, basically missed the whole season. So he's back now as a third-year guy and already has a lot of experience at that spot. And I like him, lanky-ish, longer, thinner corner. Jordan Hall, I know, is a guy, linebacker, former 4-star kid out of IMG from Virginia area originally, is a guy that it's time, right? It's time to step forward and be a guy. He's been a guy that's been involved, was involved in their third down stuff quite a bit last year, but now it's like they lost their top 2 linebackers, played a ton of snaps last year, and Jordan Turner and Cal Halliday. And so it's time for Jordan Hall to step up and become really a guy for him. He's a great athlete. And now I want to see him be like a great football player. And I think he's going to have that opportunity, and that could very much happen. The linebacker room is a little bit like I was talking about with the receiver room. You got different shapes and sizes, different tools for different scenarios there. Wayne Matthews is a second-year transfer from Old Dominion who had a ton of tackles out there and had a really good pass coverage grade coming in. He missed spring ball, but he'll be back. And then they got a couple guys that they got in the portal last year and sort of stashed, and Samaj Bridgman from Michigan and Marcellus Pulliam from Miami, guys that we don't really know a lot about. They got a younger kid named Brady Pretzlaff from in-state. So I like the linebacker depth. And then the D-line, bit of a question mark for me. The pass rush was a major issue last year. They went 6 weeks in a row without a sack. And so that's going to have to be something that they address, whether that's through scheme, personnel. They've added a couple edge guys in both portal windows, a couple younger guys, a couple older guys that I think will factor in obviously sooner. And that's a big question mark for me in terms of where that group's going to pan out. But in the back 7, I think there's some guys that are ready to step forward. I'll mention just real quick too, the 2 safeties that returned, Nakai Martinez, transferred in from UCF last year, and Malik Spencer, he's been here the whole time. Older guys now, they're going to be in their senior year, played a lot of football last year. They're going to really be looked upon as sort of the backbone, I think, of that defense right now, because, again, there's some turnover at the linebacker level and turnover in the front as well.
So pick a guy who is not a quarterback, obviously, that's kind of cheating, who, if he finally hits his ceiling, or perhaps maybe his ceiling is reached a year earlier than we all expect it to, that really could change the fortunes for this 2025 Spartan team.
Either side of the ball?
Sure.
Okay. I'll say I'll just go to where I was talking. I'll say Alex Van Sumeren is a returning starting D tackle. Was a 4-star, top 200, top 250 type of kid coming out of high school, in-state guy. Was a huge recruiting win for him. Slow start to his career because he was banged up. Even last year was banged up, and we didn't even see him much. The staff, more importantly, didn't see him in the spring. Comes in a training camp, wins a starting job, surprised all of us in the media, quite honestly. It's game 1, and we're like, 91? What? Are you serious? Started over a 6-year senior captain, among others. So he's been a good player, but if you told me and I still think he's got like a pro type ceiling from when he came out in the pedigree and everything. I think there's a lot there to him still. Just hasn't played that much football at this level. But if you told me he could snap his fingers and, like you said, max out and become the best version of himself, I would take that because I think there's a high ceiling there, but like I also was just talking about, I think that's a huge position of need too. So that's right where my eyes went, is the D-line. I think Van Sumeren's a guy that, like I said, has a high ceiling still left to him.
How do we define success for Michigan State in 25? Like, if you had to put like an achievement or a number on it, what's something you feel like will keep those in the program happy and confident they're on the right track?
I think the minimum is a bowl game. And like, again, I know that's not a high bar. I know that's not like that hard of an achievement these days, but it's something that they've only done once since 2020. So, and last year, they go into the last game, Rutgers at home playing for bowl eligibility and got their doors blown off. So, not that no one's going to throw a parade for going 6-6, but that is progress and it is still a marker and it's something that this program hasn't done for a while. So and there'd still be people that are unhappy at 6-6 too. Let me be clear about that. But I think that's the bare minimum that they need. If they go 5-7 again or worse, that's going to get real hairy, I think, going into the next year. We haven't talked about it yet, but Michigan State's looking for a new athletic director as we speak. So the Jonathan Smith's next boss is not going to be the guy that hired him. So I think 6 wins get to a bowl game. You look at the schedule; it appears friendlier than a year ago, but we say that now. I mean, who was thinking that Indiana was going to be what they were at this time last year? Let's just be real about, Illinois popped up in a way last year that a lot of people didn't foresee. Rutgers was maybe a little down compared to what people. So it looks friendlier now, but I'm sure there's going to be a couple surprises in there. To me, the big picture, sort of bottom line of it is, I think they're the same type of team. Like they definitely could have won 2 more games last year and got to 7 wins. Without miracles happening. I mean, like Boston College, they're driving in the final minute. They could have won that game. Michigan, they were in control for much of the first half, and then once they lose control, it unraveled quickly. But they were running the ball in a way that they had only done in a couple games on the road. I mean, they were in control early, but they go on to halftime, have lost control, and then they never get it back. But so they could have won 2 of those games. Maybe Illinois if they play better, but they were really banged up by the end. And Illinois is good, but what I'm getting at is I don't think that they're in a different tax bracket talent-wise. They could go 5-7 again this year. They could go 8-4 this year. That's pretty much exactly where I thought they were last year. So what does that mean? It comes down to those coin flip games. It comes down to schedule a little bit. Is there a secret Indiana, on this year's schedule somewhere? That's going to be a problem. There's not as much, of the high, not as many heavyweights in the Big Ten, I don't think, at the top end, but maybe it's a little more competitive in the middle there for them. So that's kind of where I look at it, is like talent-wise, I think they're in about the same grouping, same tax bracket as a year ago. And then what do you do with that? Where do you win on the margins if possible? But that's kind of where I'm looking at.
Awesome, man. Really enjoy this. I appreciate it. We'll have to have you back on soon. And it's always fun, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, we should do fall school, winter school, or summer school part 2, second semester or whatever. So whenever you need me, man, I'm here for you. I always enjoy the conversation.